Smash, smash!
Someone can tell me what these fish are. Sort of lost for a fish ID here. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first edition of On the Pier. It's Captain Alligator coming at you with a year-end report for the trolling season 2019. So this is the first time I've done a video like this, and just thought I'd give you a breakdown of what I saw this year out on the lake, starting salmon fishing sort of at the beginning of April, and then concluding my trolling season just last week, so about the third week of September. Obviously there's still some opportunity to get out, offshore steelhead and salmon fishing for 3-year-old fish. Obviously still happening, but for me, being in the Niagara region, I'm going to start moving into the rivers now, chasing the salmon up there, and then eventually for steelhead and browns. So that being said, this video, just my take on things, what I saw. I encourage you guys to chime in with what you saw and what you think. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, sort of the idea is that if people can come together and talk about their fishing, hopefully we can all get better together. So that's the plan with this video. So that being said, starting the season, I started for browns about the second week of March. I got my boat out of the garage and dusted off the old trolling gear, got out the stick baits and spoons, and pounded the shoreline. Fishing was really good for browns. Second year in a row that it was really strong. You know, some days 15, 20 fish. Doesn't last for long. Seems like once word gets out, fish get a little bit pressured, and you know, that's kind of the end of that. But I fished browns all the way into the middle of April, even though the king bite was pretty hot, and it remained pretty steady. There was quite a few fish around and some nice ones, sort of in that 8 to 10 pound range. Never got one for the derby, of course, because they always elude me after the derby starts, but it was a good year. Hoping for another strong season in the river this fall when they run, following what I saw in the spring. Definitely top 8 for me this spring for browns was bay rat. I've said it before. I got another video, I'll link it right here. I find that in the cold water, those baits really shine. They don't have a lot of action, but when the water's cold, troll them slow, like 1.5 to 1.9, and they do really well. So by about the middle of April, you know, King of the Lake talk starts, and people want to pre-fish for salmon. St. Catharines Game and Fish Derby's going on, so it's really salmon time. And about that time, I switched over to targeting some salmon. I'm sure you guys can attest to this. The early spring bite, the shallow bite for kings this year in the South Shore area, like talking Grimsby to Port Dalhousie, Port Weller, was fantastic. 40 to 50 feet of water for 2 to 3 weeks there was unbelievable. We got out a couple days, it was really foggy, and as expected the bite was just unbelievable. Lots of quads, lots of triple headers. It was really insane and very fun. So I'm hoping that next year the fishing will be just as good early season. You know, you have chances at lake trout, chances at browns, but those early spring kings, when they fight really hard, it can be a lot of fun. So that was a really positive part of my season, was how good that early spring bite was. That being said, King of the Lake, we had free entry from our fall win the previous year, and found, of course, you know, the day before an event, it blew like crazy, and the water that we'd been fishing blew out, so we were kind of stuck. We ended up finishing 18th in the spring event against 72 teams, which, given the forecast even on the day of, I felt pretty good about. You know, we were up against some really good anglers, and we were in a 17-foot boat eating waves coming over the front. Like we had water running in the deck. It was insane. So we did good. We got our 5. A lot of teams didn't, so I'm pretty happy about that. So King of the Lake, and after, obviously the fishing was good, shallow, leading up to King of the Lake, and it stayed that way for a little bit. And then typically in May, when you expect things to start stretching out a little bit, from the shoreline out to 100, 120, From my experience, that really didn't set up as nicely as it has in the past. I found that the fish were still either really shallow or really deep. The bar through May into June was pretty good. There seemed to be a lot of juvenile fish. It seemed like once that shallow bite that was really good, sort of 80 feet and less, died off, at least for me, I had a hard time finding those big matures. It seemed like they left us. So for most of May and June, it was an offshore program for me, running a lot of spoons in the stinger size. I'm a big fan of Michigan Stinger. This is not a sponsored video, just I like to run them. And I know some other captains picked up on that, that the size of the bait was really important. So a lot of times I'd see birds out there. Sometimes your fish would cough up baits, and pay attention to those sizes, because if you can match them with your spoons, it does make a big difference. That being said, so June, we had some nice steelhead around offshore, fishing the borderline, anywhere from 220 to 280. A couple days out there I had some customers, and we pounded them. A couple mature bites in there, but lots of those 10 to 12 pound fish, which I'm sure are 2 or 3 year olds, and lots of steelhead to keep the rods moving. Then into July, things got a little bit tougher on the salmon bite. And the lake trout, I should comment, all through the spring, I didn't see a lot of lake trout. I'm sure lots of other guys will tell you that. I was kind of surprised. A lot of times in the spring, if the kings aren't happening, you can usually kind of fall back on some lake trout fishing. That's pretty good. A lot of big lakers usually. But this year, I didn't see a lot of lake trout. I talked to a guy, I'm not sure his name, he's in Wellington, on our conference call with the MNR for the Pen project, and he said that the lake trout fishing in Wellington was really good. So maybe the fish went over there, just the way the lake's set up with the temperatures. I'm hoping so, because lake trout are a lot of fun, and I love having them around, especially in the spring and fall when they're really putting on the feed bag after December when they open, of course. But yeah, the lake trout fishing kind of slow. Didn't really get good, I don't think, until the middle of August. Then they started to come in. I mean, there were still some fish around, but that really heavy load of them, like 90 to 120 when they sit right on the lip, that didn't really happen for me until the middle of August. And when they showed up, they were good. It was good fishing. Had a couple trips out there, and the lake trout really came through. But other than that, kind of a down year for lake trout, so I'm hoping that turns around. So then July, sort of slow. I did quite a few Lake Erie trips because Lake Erie was just fantastic this year. Tons of fish. Crystal Beach, great all through July. Then it started to move west, and I started fishing more bass and kings through the end of July. As it did pick up a little bit for some nice matures out front, fishing sort of the wreck area, your typical summertime spots, 120 to 180. In general, I found that I was fishing shallower than usual. We had pretty cold water for most of the summer, and I fished a lot more lead core than normal. Normally I'd be into my coppers, you know, my 200s to 450s, but I found myself running a lot of 5 and 7 colors just to get some bites because the water was cold up high. And let me know what you think about that, if that's what you noticed. But at least on the south shore out in front of Dalhousie, found a lot of cold water and had to fish those mature fish up really high. Something that I don't really love doing, but that was just the way it was rolling. So then into August, you know, you start to think about stagers. I did a lot of fishing in tight, trying to poke a few during those low light hours. And I've got a boat going behind me right now. Welcome to the Welland Canal. So, you know, fish the offshore stuff still in August. You know, nice steelhead. And then moving into the middle of August with some stagers. And this unfortunately, for such a good season, I was a little disappointed in how it ended. It's kind of a precursor to the stager bite. Had a hard time finding those fish starting to move in. Usually around the middle of August, you start to see some fish in shallow. It's almost like a fail-safe. Middle of August, there's going to be some fish in shallow. I didn't see that. I didn't see a lot of fish. I saw a few fish, but leading up to the King of the Lake tournament, the fall tournament, which is the Labor Day weekend, I really didn't see any big pods or anything really promising. So that was sort of strange. Then as we got closer, same thing. You know, guys would get a few here and there. I got a few in tight, 50, 55 foot of water, but it was not crazy and it was not how it should be. Same thing offshore. A little bit deeper, 100, 110, sometimes on the lip, fish the bar. There's fish around, but it wasn't anything to write home about. So that takes me to the Fall King of the Lake. So this is the event that we won last year in Grey Gator 2. You know, expectations for me were the same coming in as last year. I wanted to go out, had a great group of guys, I wanted to have fun, and I wanted to catch 5 fish. It's always my goal going into a tournament is to get your limit. I think that's a good place to start. So going in, I did some pre-fishing on the Friday with Mr. Victor Papais himself, and we did okay. We fished the bar and we found some fish. It was nice water. It had 55 degrees down about 50 or 60 feet, which was nice. So we could run some deeper rigs, stretch out our long lines and fish pretty comfortably. But with the way the wind was, it kind of looked like that was going to get blown apart, and I think in all honesty it did. So we fished our pre-fishing day at the bar, kind of with the idea that I knew from fishing during the week previous with some customers that the shallow bite really wasn't happening and it hadn't set up yet. So then fished the bar, wasn't that great. So going into tournament day, where do we go? We went back to the bar because I knew there was some fish there. So we went there, really rough. North wind. The weatherman really screwed up on the Saturday because it was supposed to be beautiful both days and it was not. Saturday was pretty rough. Luckily in the new boat we didn't take too bad of a pounding, but it was still not the ideal conditions for trying to go really fast. But we got there. So we set up, we got 2 fish, and by about 10:30, and we saw a lot of other really good teams around. They weren't hooking up, so we said, forget this. We're gonna make a move, we're gonna take a gamble, and we're gonna go to Port Dalhousie and try and fish some shallow fish. And that's kind of our bread and butter. That's where me and Luke fish a lot. It's kind of our comfort zone, so we thought, you know what, let's go somewhere where we have confidence, even if we know there's no fish, because we know how to fish it and we know how to read that water. So we went there and we doubled right away, which meant we had 4 fish. One of them was a giant, and it was it was on the rigger and it jumped over the lead core. It was on the rigger and it jumped over the lead core line, like straight over it, and landed on the other side. So we cleared the board, somehow we got it in, we got both of them in the same net. That's how quick they bit. It was insane. So then sitting with 4 fish, it was about 12:30 or 1. We had a small little stretch that we beat the crap out of for 3 more hours, 2.5 more hours, because we had to be in by 3. And with about 10 minutes left, we pulled our 5th fish out. So at the end of day 1, we were in 6th place. We weren't behind by much, but the teams that did really well went to the North Shore. So we were one of the top teams who fished the South Shore, who didn't make the big run. And the weather for the Sunday looked pretty nice. It wasn't flat by any means, but with the new boat, it was doable if we wanted to go over and fish the North Shore. So that night we watched the weather and we saw the east wind was going to pick up a little bit. We didn't know how bad, sort of until the morning of. And we went and I made the decision that we were going to fish Port Dalhousie because we'd found some fish. We thought, great. We found fish, there was no one around us, so we'd go back there and we'd get our box. Obviously some other teams had sort of taken the same idea. Maybe they'd been there earlier in the day, and we saw quite a few teams over in Port Dalhousie fishing 40 to 60 feet of water. So after we started there, we only got 1 fish. It was a decent fish. It was about a 19 pounder. But it was 9:30 and the screen had dried up. No one was moving rods around us. I think Team Royal Flush was in there and they put together a nice box and they seemed to be hooked up, so they had it dialed, but it just wasn't happening for us. It wasn't our game that day in there. So I said to the guys, you know, time is of the essence and we need to make a decision. Either we're going to be content here and we're not going to beat ourselves up over, you know, if we strike out here, we gave it our best. We're either going to do that, we're going to make the run. And I think everybody was in agreement that we should make the run. So at 9:30 we picked up, we packed in, and we headed to Port Credit, which is a 27-mile run. And luckily for the new Lund, and thank you Luke for driving, because it was quite the run. We had some pretty big waves and it was just not the best day. So we made it there in about 40 minutes, which was impressive. And right away, you know, we could just see that the screen was really good. We saw Moby Nick, who'd done really good on day one. He was working just a really tight patch in there. So we sort of set up there, did the same thing. It was a north-south thing, right tight in front of the credit, like real tight. And we took our fish, we got it done. It was a grind. You know, we had one guy on each rigger and a diver. You know, we picked sides and people would move the diver back, people would move the rigger up and down just to keep it within the, you know, 4 or 5 feet of the bottom, because those fish were glued and they were not happy. So we got our fish, we got 4 fish, and we were waiting on the 5th, and Luke said, you know what, let's pull and we'll set up in front of the canal when we get back and maybe there'll be some fish there. Just as we finished saying that and started pulling the lines, one of the last divers went off and it ended up being like an 8-pounder. So we had 5, but it wasn't really what we wanted. We knew we weren't gonna pull anything off with that. So instead of setting back up and doing a couple more passes, we made the run back, and by that time it had got a lot calmer and we're sort of feeling like, okay, we got some time to work here. Mind you, only, you know, half an hour or 45 minutes, but we'll make it back and we'll set up. So we set up in front of the canal and there's lots of boats. So we figure, okay, there's some fish here, but not many people were hooked up. So we set up, we put our 4 rods out because we said we're not gonna fish any more than 4. We gotta be mobile here. And right away the wire goes, and it was a 20-pounder. So, and that was okay, we just knew, okay, we're gonna go in now. Like, we were stoked. So, get our 5th fish in. The guys were looking at us like, what the hell just happened? Because here we roll in from across the lake, set up, and wham, get one. Whatever, it was like a Hail Mary tournament for us. So, okay, in the box it goes. We go to the weigh-in and feeling pretty good. I had sandbagged us the first day. I didn't think that our box was that good, so you know, we were within striking distance if we had a really good day, and talked to Nick and he seemed to think that we had a pretty good day based on the fish that he got. So ends up being we get 2nd place by 4 or 5 ounces, which in a bass tournament would be like kind of a normal thing, but in a salmon tournament that doesn't happen very often. So congrats to Moby Nick on the 1st place finish. You earned it. That was amazing fishing. You guys grinded hard. What we saw on day 2, it was a lot of work to catch those fish. I saw you guys moving a lot of rods. It was not easy fishing, so congrats. At the end of the day, we got 2nd place with 5 great fish. We have one hell of a story to tell about that day, which was fantastic. So now we find ourselves at the end of September, and I'd like to thank you very much if you've stuck with me this long in the video, and I'd also like to thank you if you fished with me this year. Obviously this is a big year for me, starting up my charter and fishing tournaments again, my 2nd year doing that, and all the support that I get from you guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. As you can see, I'm wearing my hat. It's got my logo on it that I designed. If you'd like to pick up a hat, check them out at Peter's Tackle. They're going to be there soon. If you want to get out and fish with me, again, this charter's for anything, whatever's hot at the time. Salmon fishing in the summer, usually a good bet, so I'm going to do a lot of that. But if it's not happening, we'll go for walleye, we'll go for bass, or if you have an idea of something you'd like to do, you know, give me a call and we can see what's up. So as we move into the fall, I'm going to move my operation to the river. I'm going to do a lot of steelhead trips and some salmon, float fishing, bottom bouncing. So if you're interested in getting out for those fish, let me know. I'll also be doing some smallmouth bass here and there. So again, just message me and I'll let you know what's up. Thanks again so much for watching. I appreciate the view. If you like it, give it a like. If you want to share it, get the conversation going, make sure you hit that share button and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content. Thanks again so much for watching. Get outside, go fishing.
So what in the world is come over? What in heaven's name have you done? You broke in the speed and the sound of the loneliness. You're out there running just to be on